All right, so it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to start. One of my earliest commanding officers on a submarine used to say, if you can't be on time, be early. And so here we are. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I welcome all of you to our BTC, especially those that had to get up early on the West Coast. If I had realized we were going to do this to a national audience, we probably would have scheduled it a little bit later in the day. But I welcome you from sunny Lincoln County, Georgia, where we were going to have the R129, R107 gathering today. Of course, we postponed that till September 12th. But what we put together for you today is kind of the panel discussion portion of that. And I've got a few ground rules and slides to go over. But before I do that, I want to first welcome the members of our national club leadership that have joined us today. Our national treasurer, Ernest Fancy, is registered, and I think he's in with us today. Director at Large Jim Roberts is with us. Northeastern Regional Director Drew Webb. South Central Regional Director Brett Jurek. Eastern Regional Director Doug Giganto, our region director, is with us. And I also want to thank our newsletter sponsor, Danny Brewer, the co-owner of My Mercedes in Bimmer Place, who is, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the real technical expert here. But so we thank him for joining us. And now let me go to some slides here. I'm going to do a share screen and then get to a few little slides here. Hopefully I'll be able to find where they are. Yep, these slides. Okay, so you should see that title slide. And let me go to the next one. This is an abbreviated agenda for the meeting. You saw the detailed agenda in an email yesterday, or at least should have. I'm going to mention that there's no real hard and fast as far as following the timing of the agenda, other than I want to keep the first hour to.
Gary, I'm not hearing you.
Okay, yeah, I was muted, and,
okay.
and I'm not getting a window to unmute, which was kind of interesting. But anyway, so one, I want you to stay muted. You can imagine we're going to have 140 people in this room. If we all try to talk at once, it's just going to be chaos. So stay muted. If you have a question, chat it, and chat it to everyone, not just to the speaker, because it's really hard to see the chat window when you're trying to do a presentation. Diana and I are going to monitor the chat window and make sure we are able to address your questions to the speaker. Now, if the speaker or I can't answer your question, which is pretty likely for me, then I will ask it to the audience, and I'd like you to use the raise your hand feature, and then I'll call on you and then unmute yourself and answer the question. That way we won't have everybody trying to talk at once. Also, if we are if you have an answer to a question, I call on somebody else and your answer is substantially similar to the answer given, then take down your raise hand, because that way I can see whether someone else wants to add something different or not. Now, we're limited to presenters only sharing their screen. That's kind of a safety and security piece for Zoom. And as I said earlier, I'm not really that concerned about staying with the timing, other than I want to make sure that we're R107 the first hour and R129 the second hour. Okay, so I'm going to come out of share screen here, and I'll introduce our first speaker, who you've already heard from, Peachtree past president and membership director, Diana Quinn, and she's going to talk about her experience and her knowledge in buying a used R107. And if you looked up the article in the older article in Star on buying on 107, you see she's one of the co-authors of it. So she's very well experienced to talk about this with us. Diana, please take it away.
Okay, well, let me get my, I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see, let me get my, that's here, how am I going to do this? Okay, share my screen. Let's see, get it, I want to do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, I got some other stuff on my, okay. Can everybody see my screen here? It says Diana's Mercedes. We good?
Yeah, I see it, Diana.
Okay, good, great. Well, this is the car that I used to own. I no longer own this car. This was my very first Mercedes, and quite honestly, I did not know what I was buying when I bought this car. But I joined the club as well as a online discussion list. You know, this is in the early days of AOL, et cetera. And I continued to get many, many questions about the car. And I certainly, my husband and I, Jim, who's here with me, um, is, you know, we learned a lot about the car. And so I decided to put this little website together and to just try to help other people that, you know, really love these cars. I love the car. I had it for many years, and you know, I recently sold it for in favor of another car that I love as well. But one of the things when you're looking at these cars is probably the number one thing to look for is rust, because rust is really not really repairable without, you know, really replacing panels and everything. So places that rust seems to accumulate in this car is in the rocker panels, in the trunk, under the rear bench behind the seats in the well. Okay, so that's, you know, those are places that maybe when you look at it and you go and you look at the car looks great. It's got great carpet and everything over that rear bench in the back. Really look really carefully, because it could be hiding rust there. And if you've got rust there, you know, it's not going to be easily repairable. Or if you do repair it, it's going to be very, very costly. The next one is the soft top condition. You know, check for rips and tears and signs of holes beginning to develop. As that top goes up and down, if it's been exercised pretty regularly, it's going to start to wear around the edges. I know mine did and everything. But you know, it's very repairable, the soft top. I do not recommend, this is not a DIY project, I don't think, for the most part, unless maybe you're Gary Edwards, okay? That you're going to want to take it to a reputable shop that does tops and does them regularly, because it is a big job to replace the top. But it's about well, this is probably maybe a little out of date, probably about $1,500 to replace the top. Those plastic windows, they should not be cloudy or heavily scratched, okay? They need to be replaced if they're most likely in that kind of condition. But to replace those windows, you can't just necessarily replace them. You can, but the whole top has got to come off. And probably if you go to an upholstery guy, he's going to say, hey, you know, you might as well just replace the top. So if those windows are cloudy, the one thing that you might want to take with you is a little bit of Meguiar's plastic cleaner. Sometimes the plastic cleaner itself, there's a cleaner and a polish, and some of that cloudiness can be taken out with those products. I was pretty successful with that with my car. Let's see here. Do we have? Okay, you guys are watching the chat window. Okay,
You might want to close your bookmark.
Oh,
tab.
then it's going to go to the left.
Yeah, okay. Never mind.
Okay, so that's why I left my bookmark open. I'm going to put my bookmark, so just so it's in the center of the screen.
I should never have opened my mouth.
That's okay. The next thing on my list here is the dash pad. The dash pads typically have, you know, if the car's been sitting out in the sun, they crack, okay? And they can crack pretty profusely. You also check for an aftermarket dash cover. If it's installed correctly, they look nearly as good as the original. My car actually had a dash cover over it, you know, had one over it, and it looked beautiful. So they are a little bit of money, but original ones typically will crack. Rubber. This car has got a lot of rubber in it because it is a cabriolet and everything. The seals around the soft and the hard top, you know, check for water leaks if possible. You know, a brushless car wash might be a good place to go test the car. Go run the car through the car wash. And if those seals around that soft top are leaking, you're going to know it really, really quickly. So you don't have to wait for a good rainstorm. Hoses in the engine compartment, look for dry rot. You know, they may look perfect on the outside, but they could be deteriorated on the inside. So might not be quite as easily to determine that, but go and look for that. Interior wood and trim, the console and the dash trim, that stuff has a tendency to chip or crack. I know mine had several cracks and everything. Some of it I actually never really chose to really deal with it, but you can find replacement stuff. At like Miller's, they carry some of the replacement pieces. Although if you just need to replace one piece, guaranteed it will not match the, you know, the original stuff that's in your car. The carpet condition, you know, the carpets get worn. You know, the interior carpets can run, you know, $400 or $500, and same thing for the trunk. Again, these are, you know, these are items that can be purchased, and they can be replaced. Seat belts. I know my seat belts were, when I bought my car, were in really bad shape. They had a tendency to fray because they get caught in the door jamb. So again, very replaceable, but not cheap. You know, $350 to probably $500. Sun visors. I think Gary has one to show you. They have this foam. They have a foam core in there. Quite frankly, the foam just disintegrates over time, and they're just not cheap. Real easy to replace, but not cheap. A couple $100 for the pair. Door panel skins. If you've got door panel skins that are all scuffed up and in really bad condition, they're not going to be cheap to replace. You might be able to find something in a junkyard where maybe the door panels are still in good condition, and you can maybe find something reasonable there, or maybe find something on eBay. But again, if you only have to replace one of them, I know my car's interior was dark brown, you know, sun fades those things. If I replace one door panel, chances are it's not gonna match the other door panel. Paint condition, you know, this is usually pretty visible, pretty easy to look at. You know, look around the gas filler door, good place to detect repaint. You know, just check over the car real well. You know, does it have a bunch of visible, you know, rock chips, etc. I think you guys all know probably, you know, repainting a car is not a cheap proposition. I don't think you'd be taking your car to Mako, okay, to have your your classic SL repainted. The next thing is the subframe. This is something that probably most of us wouldn't even really know how to really look for and everything, but you would need to take it to an independent shop or to a Mercedes-Benz dealer. The good news here is that it's still a warranty item. Even after all of these years and everything, it was a safety problem that Mercedes-Benz still warranties the subframe bushings, and they will do the work. And I have an article also on my website here about that subframe. The next thing is the timing chain, the upper guide rails. Gary knows all about this here recently in a 72 that he just did. This is something that is quite replaceable. It can be a DIY project if you're mechanically inclined, and can be done, but it should be checked. If those guide rails break, then they are plastic, and what happens, it puts plastic in your engine, and then you're going to be looking at really big bucks for a repair. Could be $4,000 and plus. Camshaft. You know, if you've got a ticking noise from the right valve cover, I will say though that when the car maybe first starts up, you know, as the oil goes into them, you might have a little bit of a tick, but I wouldn't worry about it if it goes away. So again, this is probably not a repair job for most of us. You're probably going to have, you know, an independent, or probably an independent repair shop do something like this. Some of these older cars, the dealers don't really want to deal with them because they don't really have staff that really knows how to do these repairs. Hard top. Check to see if the paint matches the rest of the car. If it doesn't, that's a good indication that probably the car has been repainted. or the car's been sitting out in the sun and has faded. You know, check for any damage around the chrome, for taking the top off and on. I know for myself, that hard top, I think, was really only on the car in the winter when I stored it. But for the most part, it sat in the rack, in the little rolly rack in my garage, and it was hardly ever on the car. Alloy wheels, check for the condition of the silver paint. You know, over time the paint starts to peel, or the clear coat off of there peels off of it. The wheels can be restripped and repainted. You can also, you know, keep the brake dust. This car puts out a lot of brake dust. Keep that brake dust off of your aluminum alloy wheels, because it'll impregnate itself into the aluminum, and it's almost impossible to get out. So just good maintenance. Keep the brake dust off of your wheels, and your wheels will look, you know, wonderful for a really long time. Another real big problem in these cars is the heater and air conditioning systems. The servo and the amplifier units, you know, will go out. They need to be replaced. They have much better, some aftermarket ones now that are much better than the ones that we replaced, you know, some 20 years ago when I first bought the car. But it's a little bit of money. Air conditioning problem could be just as simple as having the air conditioning system recharged, although you're going to have to find somebody who can that has a license for the right Freon to go into these older systems. Let's hear chrome. You know, this is just good. You know, look around the car. You know, bumpers around the windows. You know, the grill area, the hard top. There's a lot of chrome on this car, which makes the car look so nice and everything. So, you know, just take a real good look around it. If it's got to be replaced, it could be some money. And then lastly on my list is in the front of the grill of the car. Those little louvers they're kind of a hard plastic, but they have a tendency to get broken. You know, you have to put your hands into the grill to get to the hood latch, and I think we broke one of mine, and so if they break, you're going to have to replace that whole unit. There's really no gluing them back into place. So that's my list. I think it's a pretty good list if you're going to go look at a car. Obviously, drivability, you know, drive the car, the front, you know, the front end suspension around the tie rod ends and ball joints. Some of that front end can get kind of loose and might need to have some work done. My husband can probably talk to the rear ball. What went out? The rear wheels.
Rear wheel bearings.
Yeah, the rear wheel bearings. We had one go out, and I almost actually lost a wheel on a curb one day. But fortunately, that didn't happen, and he was able to repair it.
Good job.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, Gary.
Great. Well, thank you, Diana. That's a great overview. Do we have any questions? We've been chatting back and forth about some of these. Any questions for Diana right now? Let's see. There's Frank Towson asked, do the later 107s, the 560 SLs, have the same challenges as the 72 to 80? Is there anything different to look out for?
Well, I believe that Ruben's going to talk about that.
Well, Ernie's going to talk about 560s.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't really speak to, or can't really answer that question because I've never didn't have a 560, and quite frankly, if I had to do it all over again when I was looking for a 107, I probably would have bought a 560 and not a 450.
Well, the real advantage of the 560, and Ernie's going to talk about it a bit, but the Mercedes after 1986 are galvanized, and so you don't see the rust issues with the later cars that you do with the earlier cars. Yeah. And that's a big deal in a 107.
Yeah, and we've got a comment here from Art Bullock too. That's a good point. Just a note, to avoid raising the soft top in cold weather, the plastic windows will crack. Yeah, that's a good point. Yep. I always stored my soft top in the winter, and I'll talk about, I always put it down in the winter time and put the hard top on it. And on my website, I've got a little a little note on how to put that away and how to preserve those plastic windows down in the boot, because it's not really great on that hard top to be down in the boot. And over time, when I had a garage where I didn't have to put the hard top on it, I left the soft top up all the time. I think it's much better on the car than putting it down in the boot and storing the soft top in the boot.
Okay, and I've got a question from my old friend Mike Greenberg. How difficult is it to repair the main oil pan gasket? I haven't done that one. Anyone want to answer that one for us? I don't see. Do we have a raised hand? No.
Yeah. Okay.
Danny, have you done that one? How hard is that?
Well, the biggest issue is the actual engine doesn't have to come out of the car. You just have to have the ability to support the engine while after you've disconnected the engine mounts in the air safely while you're under the car. You know, the oil pan can come out through the up over the top of the subframe without having to drop too much of it down. You'll drop the sway bar down. I don't want to answer the question and tell somebody I think it's a safe repair to do on your garage floor. You know, we have special tools in our shop to, you know, support the engine from above while the car's in the air. So it would be tough to do just because of the clearances involved.
Yeah, I've got an engine support that I got from Harbor Freight actually to do that type of job on a Porsche 944, and I think it would work the same way. It's about a $70 engine support that takes its support from the fender lips and pulls up on the engine.
That's correct. That's fantastic.
Okay, we got a couple other questions here. Where can I find the plastic cover on the passenger side of my armrest on my 86 SL? Maybe a junkyard, maybe eBay.
I'd go to eBay for that.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can get lucky.
And then, is there a Freon replacement without having to go to the 134?
Well, let me answer that one. You know, I like R12, and you know, you'd say, oh, but you can't buy that. Yes, you can. It's available on eBay. Now you have to be licensed to buy it. Now, what I did is I went off and got a license so I can buy it. I've got probably, 12 cans of R12 sitting downstairs. R12 is a better refrigerant for these cars than R134 is. I don't normally convert cars to R134. I recharge with R12. So, that's my 2 cents on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any recommendations for the source of the ABS sensors? Okay, well, we're starting to get to the 500. Maybe let's hold this to the 129s if we could. Not a fan of dash covers. Any other options to repair cracks? I'm aware of.
Well, there's this cottage industry that services the dealerships that fill those type of things in with plastic and give them texture and try to make them look right. And you might be able to, contact your dealership and see who they use for that type of thing. But, realistically, you've actually got to disassemble the dash, send it off, have it recovered, and put it back in. And that's probably $1,000 to get recovered, plus all the man hours to take it all apart. And that's why people put dash covers on them.
Right. Yeah. Jim Houck, I would agree with you here. He says use soft towels between the plastic ones storing the soft towels. Yes, I actually go and buy baby diaper, or when I had the car, I would go and get baby diapers. They're very soft. They don't scratch and everything. They were a really good, you can kind of cut them up if you can find them at Walmart. Walmart was the best choice for cloth baby diapers. They're not as easy to get these days as they used to be.
Okay. Let's go on to our next presenter, and we'll hold on some of the questions. And for those in the audience, take a look at the chat window and see if you can jump in and answer some of these questions. But I'd like to go ahead and have Rusty Duncan talk to us a little bit. Rusty is our current secretary of Peachtree section, and he has had a very beautiful, I think it's a 78 450 SL. It's been in his family, I think, about forever. So Rusty, could you present now, please?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint. Let's see if this works. All right, hopefully you're seeing a picture of the car. My name is Rusty Duncan. This is a 1978 450 SL. was special ordered by my grandmother in 1978 with Caledonian green body and a nickel green hardtop. Gary raised his hand. Can you not hear me?
Wasn't me.
Oh, different Gary. Anyway, I'm going to keep going and then I'll do the questions at the end just because I'm not good at this. So she bought it in 78. It lived with her in Fort Lauderdale until she passed away in 97. She'd only drove it, you know, she was a little old lady that drove the car to the grocery store about a mile away and that's it. She never took the hardtop off. When she passed in 97, my mother got the car. She also didn't drive it and also didn't take the hardtop off. She was getting ready to get rid of it in 2015, and that's when I got it. It had been sitting in a garage for 10 years. When I got it, it had 22,000 miles on it. It's currently got almost 40,000 miles from me. The things I learned about having an older car is that things wear out over time, even if they're not used. Mainly things made of rubber or plastic, but it can include other things. Oh, the rubber and plastic would be tires, hoses, suspension parts, air ducts, but also other parts can go bad as well. And you can see my list of things that I've done to the car since 2015. I know before I had it, my mother replaced the muffler, the battery, and had work done on the AC. She felt like it was an expensive car to own. But from my standpoint, I've spent about $3,500 since 2015 on the things that needed doing. The cool thing about an older car is that there are a lot of things you can do yourself, and it's kind of fun to learn about. Diane mentioned that the AC servo is one of the problem areas, and mine broke. Basically, it's made out of Bakelite, and it can crack. And when it does that, it just leaks coolant out of the car. So when that happened to me, I went and figured out that from Mercedes, it was going to cost me $1,200 plus labor to replace this part. And that motivated me to figure out how to do it myself. I found a gentleman on eBay who remanufactures these with aluminum. And I know it's a little controversial. I talked to some people, but it cost $350 and I did it myself with him on the phone with me. Actually, he was a real character and it was actually a fun experience and it's worked great. So I'm quite pleased with that. Other things that I've done, I had the coolant expansion tank was old and started cracking, so I had to replace that. Very easy repair. The washer fluid pump hadn't been used in a million years, so it was all seized up. I replaced that. Another inexpensive, easy repair to do yourself and quite satisfying. Also, I had a problem with overheating. When the car was driving slowly in traffic, it would get hot. And so I was advised that it was a fan clutch, but I didn't believe him. I went ahead and had the thermostat replaced, but that didn't solve the problem. And eventually I put the fan clutch in myself. Not a difficult installation, not expensive, and it did cure my problem. So other thing that I encountered, my driver's side window stopped going up and down. And what I found once I learned how to open the door panel to see what was in there, I found that there's a metal bracket on each side of the window, but the front one is just glued to the window, glued to the glass. There's some felt in there and it's held on by glue. It had come undone and it was basically wedging, so the window couldn't move. So that was actually not a difficult repair as well. Didn't cost me anything, just some glue. Let's see. I found some great enhancements that you don't have to do modifications to the car, but they really make a big difference in how enjoyable it is. The first thing was to get a hardtop hoist for my garage, and mine's a simple one, but you can get electric. This is a winch that you can see on the wall, the red thing. It just has a cable that goes up through pulleys to the center of the ceiling and then back down to like a bunch of belts that will attach to the hardtop, and you can just crank that top up and down. One person can do it. Really made it a lot easier to own the car. And I don't leave the hardtop off all year. I will put it on and off depending on what I want, weather or whatever. So that was great. That was about 190 bucks. The other thing I bought, which I love, is the wind deflector. Again, it doesn't attach physically to the car. It rests on the lip of the opening for the boot for the soft top, and the lid holds it in place. It works great. It changes the whole dynamic when you're driving on the highway or at faster speeds. The wind is much, you don't have the wind noise. You can have a conversation. You can listen to music. And for me, it was a big deal because my wife didn't like driving in the car with the top down because it messed up her hair. And so that solved the problem. And so we had a lot of great times in the car because of it. And then finally, I have the original Becker stereo in the car. And that's one of the things I've had to repair. There's a place in New Jersey, Becker Auto Sound, and they're awesome. It's not cheap. It's about 150 bucks for whatever the repair is, but you can ship it off and they'll take care of it. But I was able to, it's very easy to pull the stereo out of the console. It just, when you pull the little plastic knobs off and the front faceplate, there are two little metal bars that you slide out and the whole thing just comes out of the car. And so I found this device, it's a Bluetooth adapter that connects through the antenna port. So a wire goes into the antenna port in the back of the stereo, and then the antenna plugs back into the other end of this wire. And now on a particular station, I can stream Bluetooth and do hands-free telephone calls. There's a little microphone that's part of it. And there's actually a little button that you can't see in my picture, but it's at the front of my console, at the back of my console, where I can press the button to answer the phone very easily. I also found a company that makes a mount for the car that fits exactly, and it's a clip-on, so you can remove it at any time. And I've done that for a car show, where it's just, you never know it was there. Very easy things to do. And now the car feels much more modern. I can play all the music that I want. I still have cassettes though, because it's fun to use the cassettes, because it makes me feel like I'm back in the 70s, and I'm always playing the correct music from the period. I love the 70s rock, so it makes me happy. Let's see. And I think that's all of that. Those are my enhancements. I just wanted to include a couple of things that I found useful. Pelican Parts has an incredible list of tech articles that they've done, including pictures that will help you when you're trying to do lots of different types of repairs yourself. So I encourage you to check it out if you've never seen it. They also sell the parts to go along with a lot of these repairs. Cabrio Supply is the eBay seller that I bought my windscreen from. They're somewhere in Europe, and it came all the way, and it was 260 bucks, including shipping. So I'm very pleased with that. Well made. And then the man who makes the AC servos, he's still out there. He's out in California, and this is his info. If someone wants me, I can put it into the chat. But he's a great guy, Chris Truska, real character and very helpful. And so that is it. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen and I guess take questions. Gary, I don't know if anybody had any. But.
Yeah, we've been answering questions on chat mostly. So let's go ahead and go on to our next presenter, and then we'll hit some more questions after that. Our
Great.
next presenter is Peachtree's past president, Ernie Smallman. He's going to talk to us about why the 560 SL is the best of the R107 group. Ernie, could you please step up and unmute and talk to us now?
Okay, well, I'm going to sit up instead of stepping up. The 107, I guess, series was produced for 18 years. They made 237,000 of them. The 560 SL was produced from 86 to 89. Mercedes averaged selling 20,000 units during that period. The 560 weighed in at 3,500 pounds, was described as a massively impressive machine. Interestingly, some people called it a Panzer wagon instead of an SL light. The weight was needed to meet U.S. crash test and safety standards. Basically, it was a 500 with a longer stroke and detuned emissions. But over the 3 years, they managed to add a number of enhancements to keep them selling well, like suspension improvements, braking changes such as ABS, driver airbag, interior improvements. But the most notable was the wheel size went to 15-inch. Many people call that a manhole cover. When you look at the car, you can appreciate why it got that description. The 560 SL was sold in the US, Australia, and Japan, mainly because of emission regulations. California had the largest market. The average manufacturer suggested retail price from Mercedes-Benz was $63,975. Time you added sales tax of 6 to 8%, maybe 2% registration, and dealer excessive charges, the average purchase was over $70,000 for a brand new one. They quickly developed a reputation for being not expensive to maintain, but expensive to fix. Now, currently, 560s are going for 2 or 3 times the price of earlier series of 107s. They've been described by several as being the most valuable of the series. Color is subjective, but does add something to the price. The rarest colors tend to bring a little more. The rarer colors are, quote, black, blue, turquoise, and light beige. The bulk of the ones produced were white, red, or silver. Now, the 230, 250, 280s in the 90s were going for $20,000. Now they're in the $75,000 range. The R107 values have been limited by the lengthy period of production, large number produced, and frankly, by the quality of most that have been one-owner cars, how well they've been maintained. But collectors are now going to the R107 as the last, the 560 is the last of the 107 muscle cars. And it had a big 5.6 liter V8. Right now, the values under 30,000 miles on a 560 can bring 45,000. Under 50,000 miles, 27,000 or less, and under 75,000 miles, 20,000 or less. Now, Mint low mileage models are bringing high dollar amounts at auction sales, as you've seen in the Star and other auction publications. But higher mileage models are still available and affordable. Most prognosticators anticipate the 560 will increase in value about 10% a year in the next coming years. The Star magazine in August of 2016 and 2017 both gave reasons to buy the 560. One was an excellent blend of classic styling, good performance with unparalleled safety features, grand touring comfort and ride quality, generally reliable and excellent parts availability, and finally, it was affordable price with appreciation of well-kept originals. Now, I personally have a 86 560 with 31,000 miles, and it's in good condition. Everything pretty much is premium on it except the nut behind the wheel, and I'm still working on him. Any technical questions, I'm going to ask Danny to kick in on, because mainly I just drive it to someone to fix when I need it. Back to you, Gary.
All right, let me unmute, and thank you very much. We're still answering questions in chat pretty well, so I want to go ahead and go to our next presenter. Reuben Howard is our next presenter. He is, in my mind, the future of our club. He is one of our youngest members. He is also on our board of directors, and if you took a look at the last Star magazine, you'll notice a article entitled Fintail Fanatic written by Reuben Howard. So I would say he's a frequent contributor to Star magazine. He had one in there last year too. So let me welcome Reuben Howard to speak to us about the safety innovations of the R107.
Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to discuss the safety innovations of the 107, and then the second part of the discussion we'll talk about the R129. So the main thing that I think makes the 107 series so great is not only is it, a classic, good-looking car that, combines 60s styling with innovations from the 80s, but they're also extremely safe cars. You don't have to worry about, if worse comes to worse, you have an accident that, would be life-threatening. So I'll talk about the structure because the structure of this car is very unique. It was one of the first cars to include a reinforced A-pillar that served a dual purpose as not only the windshield structure, but also a roll cage structure. So it was actually so strong that you didn't have to have a secondary roll bar that would be, behind the driver's head. So that's like one of the main things that that sets the R107 apart from most convertibles of the time. Another thing is crumple zones. So the crumple zones in the R107 are part of what makes it so safe. Along with the placement of the fuel tank, which is above the rear axle, it ensures that if you get into a rear end collision, there's a lot of a smaller chance of anything blowing up like a Pinto. The removable hardtop, it could withstand a considerable amount of weight on the car. So that was derived from the W113 Pagoda series, and they sort of improved and refined the process of that car. US cars, which we don't really like for the most part, with the huge 5-mile-per-hour bumpers, they actually featured a shock absorber within. So I don't like the aesthetic appeal per se, but I do like the peace of mind of having a US bumper in case you're in a parking lot or something and someone tries and dings you. So the overall chassis of the car, it's very reinforced, especially underneath. You've got longitudinal members and cross members of various strengths, which resulted in the crumple zone that they were trying to achieve with that car. And model year 1981 and on, all the hoods on the R107 or bonnet, if we have anyone from the UK, they were actually made out of aluminum, so that made it lighter and stronger as well. So the windscreen on the 107 is actually, it's glued into the frame of the windscreen to increase the strength. And as well, the rear hardtop window is also glued into the shell of the hardtop. And one thing that, in regards to steering, is it features a telescopic collapsible steering column and steering gearing, which is situated behind the front axle, which in the event of an accident, it would sort of push the steering wheel and sort of act as an airbag until the airbag was released for the 107 in 1985. The door handles were always designed to be able to be opened after an accident without having them spring open on their own. So if you needed to be rescued from your car, that could easily be accessed. And then, as Gary mentioned earlier, galvanization of the steel began in model year 1986, which is just sort of like a structural thing. So safety from an interior design standpoint, the 107 began with a padded dashboard and surrounding surfaces. So we call that the safety wheel. If you were to get into an accident, your body would sort of like push the wheel forward, and it would absorb some of the impact and kinetic energy from the impact, so that there's less risk of injury. And then starting 1986, there's a driver knee bolster, which you'll notice underneath the steering wheel, and it's carpeted, and it's sort of you can definitely tell the difference between earlier and later models with that. So that's something that you very commonly, or you will see on a 560 SL. Starting 1985 model year, there was an airbag available, and then 1986, the airbag was standard. So all 560 SL models have an airbag. 3-point seatbelts with pre-tensioners were standard across the entire fleet of the cars, starting with the 350 SL in 71, all the way through the end of the series in 1989. And the seats were also designed to have an ergonomic seat position to support a healthy posture. So that's the case whether you have 450 SL, 380 SL. And when the 560 SL came out, it actually had larger side bolsters on the interior, which just kept you a little more snug. So the A-pillars on the car, from an exterior standpoint, they were molded in a way to help channel rain to flow through the car to keep the windows clean. And you had wraparound taillights, which were ribbed, and they were designed to maintain visibility even in foul weather. So let's say that you were driving through heavy snow or mud, and you would have all the dirt would actually accumulate within the inside of the rib, keeping the exterior of the taillight nice and clean. And then from a performance standpoint, disc brakes were standard on the car, and post 1980 model year anti-lock brakes were available, and they were standard starting 1986. And then the seatbelt tensioner starting 1982 model year on was available on these cars. So that's all I have for safety innovations on the 107, and I'll get back to you guys with the 129 in the second part of the video. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. I didn't know a lot of that stuff. That was really neat. In the interest of time, I'm going to truncate my little presentation here on preventing engine damage and say just 3 things. Cam Oiler tubes, upper guide rails, and timing chain if it's stretched. Need to check those things, and but I won't show my pictures on that. If you want to talk more about that afternoon, I'll go through what I've just done to fix those issues on my car. We have some time for questions. I had one question submitted in advance by Alan Fallow, I mean, and he asked, has any 107 owner had a problem with the sun visor not staying in place once it's been removed from the anchoring clip? And I went downstairs and grabbed the sun visor. It's not on my car, and put back a little bit, and notice that it just kind of falls. It does have a little ball joint up here that's screwed in, and I'm wondering if some other folks have had experience with this and how to stop this thing from sagging when you unclip it. And you can either raise hand would be nice, or chat. Okay, I've got, you can tighten the screw from Rusty. Now I tried that on mine, it didn't change anything. So anybody else have an answer for that one? If I were going to do this, I would unscrew this, take the top of the ball joint off, and I'd probably put 2 pieces of aluminum foil in it, and then tighten it down and see if that tightened it up enough, because it's still got to move, because you still got to be able to do this and that, but it can't sag like that. So that's what I would try. Ruben says tighten the screw next to the ball joint. That's what, it's the same thing. That's this little screw, but if it's as tight as it'll go and it doesn't do it, then you got to do something else with it. Like I said, I'd take this apart and put something else in it. Okay. Okay. And quick question I see, do you need to change your single row timing chain if you have a 380 SL? If I had a 380 SL with a single row timing chain, I wouldn't drive the car till I changed it to a dual row timing chain. The Mercedes did a recall, I think, on those cars and backfitted those cars, and they had an issue with breaking timing chains, and I would make it a dual row timing chain. Okay, anybody else have questions we want to address before we take a short break? 560 SL with a noisy lifter on startup that does not go away. That is not a manual adjustment, that's a hydraulic lifter. So you might want to take a look at it. It's probably the hydraulic lifter, though it certainly could be a cam issue. It's not that hard to get those cam covers off. Go take a look and see. Clicking noises that go away, it probably means you pump the oil up to the lifter and things are just probably going to be fine. Clicking noises that don't go away can be lifters. I've also found that leaking exhaust sound a lot like clicking lifters. So it can be a lot of things. You need to probably follow up on it if it doesn't go away. Anyway, let's, I don't see a lot of other questions to go. I'd like to go ahead and take a break till 5 after, and then we'll start up on the 129 section, okay? So it's a good time for a head call or another cup of coffee. And I'll be back at 5 after or so. Y'all can talk amongst yourself if you want.
On that noisy lifter, possibly one of the big issues with just 1 or 2 lifters on one bank is the cam oiler tube for that particular area of the cam can actually rob the pressure from a couple of lifters only, but still deliver it to the rest of that bank or that side of the engine. If that helps, could be just a cam oiler tube.
Yeah, I was going to mention cam oiler tubes as, a way to avoid destruction of these engines. This cam oiler tube is only held on by a couple little plastic pieces, and I've got a picture of that. Okay, I'll share a screen and won't take a break quite yet. Let me share a screen. I'll show you where the cam oiler tube is. Share screen. Okay, there. And which means I got to minimize my chat windows. There. Anyway, this is a picture of the service manual of the lubrication system of the engine. And if you see where my cursor is, up here is where the cam oiler tube is. It's a thin aluminum tube that is held on only by little plastic pieces. And the plastic pieces with time will get brittle. And they can leak, or they can cause the cam oiler tube to just totally fall off. If this thing falls off, you've got these cam bearings up here that don't get any oil. And if that happens, your cam will eventually seize up. That's really bad, because then you'll have valves hitting pistons. It's a really expensive engine repair. And these little plastic pieces on the cam oiler tube are not only easy to replace, they only cost about, you could do all of them for less than $10 in parts. And so it's a very useful thing to pay attention to. And I'm glad Danny jumped in on that one.
I see a question here. Opinions on values of early 107s, small bumpers versus late models. Early 107s, I think they're more of a novelty. You can definitely drive a 560 SL or a 380 SL every day much more comfortably. But the very early models like the 350 SL and the short pumper 450 SL, they can be a lot of fun. And they also have actually more power than the post 74 450 SLs due to emissions regulations. So that answers your question.
Okay, there was a question about ABS wheel sensors for pre-86 cars. They apparently are unique to the 107s, and that the ABS is an option. I can't find them anywhere and was wondering if anyone has any idea about alternative parts or mods of other parts to make them work. Ruben or Danny?
I'm not sure about the source of the sensors, but 107 was available with ABS starting 1982.
I can't answer the question as to their availability, but there should be an aftermarket option if anyone wants to go that. But if you need to, get your ABS system back up and operational, sometimes we have to utilize those aftermarket sources. But I'm not aware of them not being available.
Hey, one of the things I often do for obscure parts is to put together an eBay search with that part number so that I'll get an email as soon as that part shows up. It was very effective in helping me get a valve adjustment wrench for the 107, which is not available commercially. Well, is everybody back?
Hey, Gary.
Yep.
Yeah, just realized I could, this is Matt Kassendorf. Just realized I could unmute myself. We
didn't tell you that.
Yeah, I thought you guys had complete control. The floppy sun visors, there is a YouTube video with great instructions on it. The adjustment screw that's visible doesn't do it. You actually have to take off the header, the windshield top header, which is not that hard to do. Just be very careful as you ease it off, because it's aluminum backed and can bend. And then that exposes a little cup type thing that holds the ball joint itself.
Yeah, it's that right there.
Yeah, and what the video said, and I tried it, and it actually works beautifully, is to get just some spare leather. You can get just a piece of thin scrap leather, make some very, very small strips, and feed those into the space between the little ball joint holder and the ball joint itself, and then tighten the thing back up. I did that on the passenger side sun visor, I guess about 5 years ago, and it still stays up over bumps and everything else.
Sounds like a great idea. Thank you for that.
You bet.
And okay, it's 3 minutes after 11. I'm going to go ahead and get started on the 129 section.